I love credit cards and the benefits they can bring. In fact, my player two and I have over 30 credit cards between us. We have used points and miles to travel in business and first class internationally, to stay in some of the finest hotels imaginable, in some of the most exotic locations in the world. And we have loved this hobby. And I think that for the person who does it right, the points and miles hobby is perhaps the greatest hobby, or at least the hobby that returns the most on your investment of anything that a person could ever devote themselves to. But it has to be said that just like so many other things in life, credit cards have a danger involved in them. And for many people, they're not a path to a better life, to greatly improve travel and new experiences, but rather they're a path to stress, to hardship, and to financial ruin. So today I want to talk to you about 5 reasons that credit cards can utterly destroy your finances. So if you would hit that like and subscribe button, and let's look at it together. There's really 2 sides to the credit card argument. I mean, you see those of us on here on YouTube who are in this space, who are always talking about all the awesome things you can do with your points and miles, or with your cash back that you can accumulate with credit cards. And for every one of us, and every one person that is using them in that magnificent way, there are probably 10 or 20 or 100 people who are drowning in credit card debt, who their credit cards are destroying their credit profile. Those credit cards are taking food from their family and they're stealing away because of the debt that they owe on those cards from a quality lifestyle. So just like so many things in life, it either is a positive or it can be an extreme negative. I think of it kind of like a gym membership. You know, a gym membership can be the best thing ever if a person's disciplined, because regardless of what you're paying a month, if it's $20 or $50 or $100, I guess with Equinox, $300, well, that could still be a great investment if a person has the discipline to actually go to the gym every day and work out and follow a routine. But how many people do that? They tell us that gyms actually, their business model exists on the fact that so many people sign up for them, and I think a lot of us have been in this boat, but don't actually use the membership. So you've got 2 sides of the same thing. For one person, it's no benefit and an utter financial drain, but for the other person who's disciplined and uses that membership, it's got great benefit in their life. And credit cards, even in a more extreme way, can be both of those things, either fantastic or absolutely destructive to a person's life and their finances. So what are the 5 ways that if a person doesn't do it correctly, that if they don't do it with conscientiousness and planning and self-discipline, that credit cards can absolutely destroy their life? Well, the first one is overspending. Now, those who are against credit cards, folks like Dave Ramsey and others, they're going to say this is the biggest reason, because people just don't have the discipline not to overspend. And what that means is that when you're using a credit card, it's a little bit different than if you're paying cash. Because with cash, if you have $100 and you pay for something that's $20, well, you're getting back $80, but it's very visible. You feel it that you're down $20. But with credit cards, since the bill doesn't have to be paid for, 30 or 45 days or whatever it may be, because of that, it's a short-term loan that it's not really impacting your real money in your bank account. So it feels like, it's almost free money for some people. So what can happen is, rather than thinking about it, their spending habits can change. And they can go in and spend on things that they wouldn't normally spend on, or spend extra, or say, it's not a big deal, I'll just pay it off when the bill comes. but they can overspend. And I'm telling you, for a lot of people, Ramsey is right. Now, I still love credit cards, and I think for many of us it's great, but people have to be honest with themselves. Am I going to have the discipline to just spend on the things I normally would, or the things that I'm planning for, rather than simply going out and feeling like, oh, I've got all this access to all this money and overspending on things? That's the first real danger, and it is very, very real. The second real danger is late payments. If you make late payments on your credit cards, it will destroy your credit profile. Now, there's several factors to a credit score. We talk about this all the time in the community. There are things like, how much actual outstanding debt you have versus how much available credit you have, and that's a pretty big chunk. But the biggest chunk of your credit profile and your credit score is whether you make on-time payments. And 1 or 2 30 or especially 90-day late payments will absolutely tank your credit score. And that'll mean when you go to buy a house or go to buy a car or whatever it is that you need credit for, you won't have it because of that credit profile that's been damaged by those late payments. And so what happens, I think, is some people just forget, or they don't look at the bill, or they don't conscientiously make a plan to, I know this card is coming due at this time and I need to pay it. And so they end up making late payments. And it is a terrible mistake that absolutely will damage your credit score in the short term especially, but even if you have several, and especially if they're 90-day lates, it can damage your credit profile even in the long term. So it's a terrible, terrible mistake that will really, really impact your financial life. The third thing is one that's not often talked about, but I absolutely, after doing this for so many years and being a person that followed, the Ramsey plan and the envelope system and all that for years, I realized when I got into credit cards at the very beginning, I'm going to have to find a way to track this. And that is not tracking your spending. That is a terrible mistake because, you see, it's a different pool than your bank account. So what ends up happening if you have $10,000 in your bank account and therefore you can spend $10,000 on your card. But if you're not paying attention to it and you're just spending and you're not kind of comparing those or looking at it, if you don't have a system, and I have a system to do that, but if you don't have any kind of planning with that, then you cannot pay attention. You're not tracking what you're spending. You don't know what you're spending in different categories, so it doesn't line up to your budget. And that can mean that you can get behind, and therefore you're not making payments on your credit card based upon money you had before you started spending on your credit cards, but rather I think a lot of people end up, even people who do make the payment and don't carry a balance, I think they're still paying with future money. In other words, when the bill comes due, they don't have the money to pay it until they get paid right before the bill is due. When really the right way to do it would be to have the money in your account before you start spending on the card. Then it's a total wash. It's real money that you're spending. But I don't think that happens with a lot of people because they simply don't track their spending. And it's a huge, huge mistake that ultimately can catch up to you and damage your finances. Number 4 is getting so caught up with the newest, flashiest, best cards that give great sign-up bonuses or maybe have great multipliers or have all these travel perks, but high annual fees. And that is a person who doesn't really consider high annual fees. That's a mistake because some people's budgets can afford that, especially people who are spreadsheet warriors. I'm kind of that way. I keep track of every credit on every card, and I make sure at the beginning of every month, I look and see, what do I need to use this quarter? What do I need to use this month in order to get back my credits? But people who don't want to mess with that, high annual fee cards can eat your lunch because you can very quickly rack up 2 or 3 or 4 of them, and now you got $2,000 to $4,000 in annual fees. And you're not really getting any return back on that. It's just money that's going out. So yes, the cards can be great, but they really only make sense for a person who is going to keep track of it, who's going to make sure they get the benefits from it, and has done a cost-benefit analysis of whether those annual fees are actually worth it for them. which leads us to number 5, which is the biggest one that we talk about in credit card YouTube all the time, and that is paying interest because you carry a balance on credit cards. Credit cards are the worst loan imaginable, besides maybe like those payday loans or maybe the kind of loans you get on a car title or something like that are given to people that don't have credit and can't get a credit card. But besides that, credit cards are the worst type of loan because they have the highest interest rates. I mean, often 25, 28, 30, 31% interest. That is insanity. And so the credit card companies, they're hoping, they're wanting, and I'm not disparaging them for this, that's their business model, that people will carry a balance, make the minimum payment, and pay on that forever, and make the bank interest year after year after year. And many, many, many people do. I think that a person, if they want to win at the credit card game, if they want to really get benefit and not let the bank be the winner at the end of the day, you cannot ever pay interest. And so what you need to do is, when you're doing the rest of the things on this list, when you're tracking your finances, when you're not overspending, when you're being conscientious of your annual fees, then you can very well have the money beforehand to pay your credit cards before they are due or late, and before you don't have the money to pay the entire balance. Because when you carry a balance, those credit card interest rates will eat you alive, and people can become a slave to the bank month after month, year after year. Well, that's my list of the 5 things that I think can destroy a person's finances with credit cards. Now, all that said, I still think it's the greatest hobby in the world if a person's disciplined. And every one of these requires self-discipline. You've got to know yourself. You got to be honest with yourself and say, am I the kind of person that's going to be able to manage all this, going to be willing to do it, or am I going to get tired of it or lazy about it or whatever? You got to know, because they can be the greatest benefit in the world. They can do like they've done for us and send you to exotic, great locations, stay in super great hotels you wouldn't normally be able to afford, fly in business class that you'd never be able to pay for on your own. But it can also quickly destroy your finances. So be careful. If you would, please hit the like and subscribe button. Also, consider my channel membership. It's $2.99 a month. You can cancel anytime. I give great tips about great redemptions. I have special award videos for my members only, and I do early releases. You can cancel anytime. Also, hit the like and subscribe button, and hopefully I will see you here next time.